We have a book club in the membership. It's Pantry Pals Book Club. And we pick different books every month and we talk about them and a bunch of other stuff. But this month's book, February's book, was The Fourth Turning is Here. And I chose this book because, one, I've read The Fourth Turning, which I do highly recommend. And I do also highly recommend this book. I'll put links for both of them down below. But it gives you the cyclical history and what we can expect moving forward. And I thought today we would chat a little bit about it and maybe discuss how we can prepare for it. We have friends coming over for dinner tomorrow night. So I pulled out chickens. I pulled out 3. 2 of them are going to be for dinner tomorrow. And one of them is being cooked up and prepared to take to my friend, who is basically housebound right now. So I'm going to set her up with a few dinners with a chicken. But I'm making homemade stuffing and homegrown chicken and canned carrots that I canned with this amazing, I'll show it to you guys, this amazing seasoning and salad and apple pie. It's, you know, a total pantry feast for 6+ people. So I thought this would be a really good time for us to chat about the book and then talk about what's coming. If you're new here, welcome to SuttonsDaze. My name is Lisa, and we're all about pantry preparedness. And having a prepared pantry is probably, in my mind, one of the best insurances that money can buy because it really does safeguard you. We have to eat. No matter what else, we have to eat. And so making sure that we have a pantry that can sustain us and those people in our family and our household is really important to me. Now, this is the book that I showed you is The Fourth Turning is Here. So a turning is every 80 years. It's basically a life cycle, right? Every 80 years, we go into a new turning, and we are currently in the fourth turning. The fourth turning is the most chaotic. You will see this in everything. Politics, largely politics, okay? We are in the fourth turning, regardless of where you land on this. But if you read the books, in the first book, they did say that in the fourth turning, we are looking at the very high likelihood of a third world war. And they reiterated it in the second book. There were 2 authors of the first book. One of them has since passed. And so now the other author is the one that put out the second book. They're both a fairly long read or listen. They do a lot of, you know, back and forth, flip-flopping examples, that kind of thing. But the crux of it is that there are these 80-year cycles, and so every 80 years you end up in a new cycle, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, summer, or what is it, spring, summer, winter, fall. We are currently in winter, the fourth turning, and it'll be late 2030s before we actually end up back into the first turning. That's scary. Okay, so when you're looking at everything that happens now, all of the major nastiness that has happened in the world has typically happened in the fourth turning. Both world wars, the Civil War, and here we are. And you know, it's pure chaos out there right now. So one of the things we were reading in this book was that this, you know, it's coming. And if you read the book and you look at everything that's happening today, you see it. It's there. And so my challenge to the book club members was, okay, we have been given the information. We've been given the information. This is going to happen because we are not the corporations that run the government, that run the country. And so this is pretty much a guarantee that it's going to happen. Back in 2020, I said, we're not done, not by a long stretch, with the difficulties that we are currently seeing, and they're probably going to get worse. I'm now reading that we could see over the next 20 years, cost of living doubling in 20 years. So these are some serious things to consider. I plan on still being around in 20 years. Those are my plans. We'll see what happens. But in order to make sure that that happens with theoretically the least amount of discomfort, it's time to get prepared. So if you have not already begun preparing, it's time to start. But don't do it from a place of fear. Do it from a place of not. So I'm going to ask you the same thing that I asked my book club people. What can you do today to start preparing for the next 10 years? Put it in the comment section down below. Knowledge. So whenever I make a big life change, okay, whether it is changing jobs or moving to a different area or whatever the case may be, I take time to set myself up with different steps, right? I make sure that certain bases are covered so that I know that I have the money, that I have the resources necessary to survive for 6 months to a year if things don't go exactly as I thought that they would. And this was kind of like my very first preparedness steps. I have always done this. Well, not always, but in the last 20 plus years, 25 years, you know, that's what I did. Prior to that, those were the days when you could literally walk into some place and go, I'd like to work here. And they went, okay, let's go, you know, and you had a job. You can't do that anymore. So now it takes a little bit more preparation, a little more time. And that is very much the case when you're looking at your pantry. My sugar container. Hey there, sugar. I don't know, it just makes me laugh. Okay. If you're just starting out in the preparedness game, you're going to potentially feel like you are so behind, right? And you just need to take a deep breath. So if you're going to listen to what they're saying in this book, we're looking at over the course of the next decade, things are going to get significantly more difficult. The potential of war is very much there if you haven't read a newspaper or watched the news. And so there are things that we can do today to ensure that our homes, our people are taken care of, that there is, you know, that much less hardship to try to endure. And it doesn't cost a fortune. It does cost mindset. It will require you to adopt a certain mindset so that you're not constantly thinking about instant gratification or keeping up with the Joneses, you know, that kind of thing, so that you are thinking that every single thing that you don't do or do impacts how you get through the next decade. I'm making sage bread today, and it's all proofed, and I'm using the last of Marta's chicken seasoning that she gave me, and I'm putting it right into the bread because one loaf of bread is going to be stuffing for all of these birds, and the other loaf of bread is going to be enjoyed with dinner. See, things don't always have to be difficult. You adapt to what's available, you make it work with what you've got, and you go from there. And that's very much how we deal with our pantries also. What do you do to start? You grab a pen and paper. By grabbing that pen and paper, I have to do this 4 times, count with me. By grabbing that pen and paper, your next thing is to sit down and figure out what you need to do, okay? You know what your parameters are. You know how much space you have. You know what your budget is. You know all of that. So that's not something that I can address personally, other than to say there are more places to store it than you think, and there are ways to save money, and we all know what they are. Is it more difficult for some people? Absolutely. Absolutely. It is more difficult for some people. There are some people who are on a very fixed income. There are some people who don't have the physical ability to do certain things. Does that mean you should not prepare? No, it just means you need to look at different ways to prepare that may not be something that the whole general preparedness community sees or acknowledges or suggests, because we're all different and we all are preparing differently. But no matter what your situation is, there's a way to prepare. So if you are light on money, find your local food banks. They will help you. I promise you, they will help you. So just like with anything else that you do in your life, okay, if you have the luxury of preparing ahead of time for major changes, then there are things that you do differently than if it's a last minute, oh my God, duck and roll, right? So in this case, we've got a heads up. And that heads up was spelled out very nicely in the book, that without saying that for sure this is it, okay? But this is cyclically what humans have repeated for lifetimes. Centuries, not even decades, centuries. This is what they have repeated, and this is what happens. And so if we were to follow history, we've already seen the chaos. We've already seen how bad it can get. And unless you have this overwhelming desire to repeat it, now is the time to prepare for it. So I know a lot of people are talking about, oh, well, they'll get back to rationing. What are you going to ration? The food-like substances that are out there? I don't know. I'm not a big believer that rationing, the way that it happened back with World War II, will occur the same way. Because, number one, they ate real food. At least Americans are not real big on real food. Most of us have forgotten what it is, where it comes from. There are legitimately a large part of a generation that are out there going, well, I don't kill animals. I just get it from the supermarket. Yeah, okay. The meat fairy doesn't exist. Neither does the bread fairy. And neither do the fruit fairies. Now they're coming out with, some coating to put on fruits and vegetables to make them last longer. Don't get me started. So, we are moving further and further away. It will help reduce food waste. No, it won't. It will not help reduce food waste. People being more conscientious about what they're doing, getting back to real food, will reduce food waste. You want to reduce food waste? Tell people they can only eat what they can grow or raise. You can do it. You can do it anywhere. Quite seriously. This smells so good. You don't have to raise cows. You can raise chickens. You can raise rabbits. You can do all of that. So you've got your pen and paper. You're going to figure out how and where you're going to store it all. I have a playlist I will link at the end of this video to talk about different ways to store different things. Obviously, there are the forever foods that you can consider that are very inexpensive that you can build up over time. Once you figure out what you need, and that's really simple. Take a look at what you're eating today. How can you produce some of that yourself? How can you stock up on some of it? How can you maybe change some of it so that, beef is expensive right now. So maybe cutting that beef with lentils or cutting that beef with beans in order to make those meals where you normally have beef. You'd use half the meat and still get just as much protein. It's fiber and it's good for you. But you're going to have to be willing to give up and to make some changes. And a dime to a dollar says that these changes, they will be healthy changes. They will be things that are good for you as opposed to driving through McDonald's. So you are going to map out what you need based on what you currently eat, based on your current requirements, okay? Historically, we didn't eat a lot of bread. We didn't eat a lot of flour. We didn't eat a lot of the things that people are now allergic to, okay? And I do air quotes because, yes, I understand gluten intolerance. I understand nut allergies. I understand all that. And I understand that it didn't just occur and that it was not as mass as it is today. And so obviously something that we are eating is causing this to occur. The entire human race does not suddenly become allergic to nuts. You know what I mean? So something in our chemistry, in our biology is being changed due to the food-like substances. that is causing us to not be able to tolerate this. Or it's the quantity, if it's gluten. You're not supposed to eat half a loaf of bread every day. It's just not what you do. So once you've got your list, it's time to make an action plan. But you don't have to buy it all at once. If you look at it, we've got 10 years. Well, we don't, okay? So safety's sake, let's cut that in half, okay? We've got 5 years. You want to cut it even further? Fine. You've got 2.5 years. It's amazing what you can store up and stock up on in 2.5 years without somebody calling social services to make sure that you haven't completely lost your mind, okay? Be cognizant of who you allow to see what you have, of who you allow to know what you have, and you do you to the best of your ability. Stay off of Pinterest. Pinterest pantries are ridiculous. They are absolutely ridiculous, and they are non-functioning, and they are there to make you keep up with the Joneses. Next, you're going to start figuring out some menu plans. I don't menu plan. Whatever. Okay? How are you going to know how to use the stuff that you have stored up? You're going to have to start using it. You're going to have to start integrating it into your menus so that you're aware of how to use it. Because having it on your shelf in buckets hidden away here and there does you no good when the time comes if you don't know how to use it. So start integrating that in. Do like I said, and cut your ground beef with lentils or with beans to make it go further. We used to do taco night, and we figured out that by adding refried beans right in with the taco meat, extended that taco meat huge, okay? People don't put oatmeal or breadcrumbs or crackers in the meatloaf because it's something awesome to do. They do it because it extends the meat. It makes more out of the meat than is actually there. Our grandparents did it forever. Make the most out of what you've got. You can do it too. Remember that you're not here to impress anybody. You are here to make life more comfortable for when it gets uncomfortable. If we have the next 10 years being complete and utter chaos, if we have civil unrest, if we have wars, if we have extreme inflation and all that goes along with it, people are spending a lot more for their groceries than they were 2 years ago. And that's going to continue to rise unless you get ahead of it today. If you can buy it for $1 today and next year it costs you $2, you've saved money. And if you have to buy it next year at $2, but the year after that it's $4, you've still saved money. That's the way it works. Building your pantry, building up your preparedness. And once you get to a certain level, then you can start going out, kind of like an octopus, okay? You're going to get that main head of the octopus, and that's going to be your food. And you're going to figure out your food for 6 months to a year, whatever you want it to be. But you're going to take little bites of it. You're going to cut it down so that it's something that you can attain every month. So you don't want 60 pounds of beans this month. You want 10 pounds of beans this month, and 10 pounds of beans next month, and 10 pounds of beans the month after that, and 10 the month after that. You break it down into manageable chunks. So if you break it down to once a month, putting X amount of dollars away to stock up, just like I did that $40 stock up, right? Then those are foods that you know will be good and around for a few years. Then start learning how to use them. So that's one of the tentacles off the octopus. Learning how to use what you've got, backfilling it. That's super important to do. The next one is to start focusing on other areas like hygiene and paper products and money, okay? Figuring out how to make the most out of what you've got coming in so that you don't have as much going out, but that it's staying focused at where you're at. Can you pay off that car payment? Can you pay off that house payment? Can you pay off any credit cards, any other bills? That's another tentacle right there. You want to keep plugging away at all of these, plus that main head of the octopus, in order to make sure that all of your branches of preparedness are addressed. You don't do it all at once. That's not how you do it. Do you need every crazy gadget out there? Absolutely not. You need the basics. You need the absolute basics. If you're one of my canners, then you know you need a pressure canner. And as long as you don't do something foolhardy with that thing, you will have that for a lifetime. The jars are a one-time investment unless you're playing soccer with them, okay? So these are the things that you do. Stock up on the lids. Make sure you've got lids for a few years because prices are going to keep going up, right? So you're going to figure out what you buy one time, which may impact the budget a little bit, and then what you use that for to increase your overall preparedness. Sometimes that one-time purchase, but every little gadget and gizmo that's out there are completely unnecessary. You need to be able to stay warm when it's cold. You need to be able to cook food and heat food. You need to be able to stock food safely. You need to know how to use that food now that you've got it. Those are your big things right there. A lot of this stuff you can find at thrift stores, you can find at garage sales, you can find at marketplace, whatever. There are ways to get where you need to go. If you are constantly looking at the obstacles, then you are not looking at the solutions. And there are solutions out there for everything. My first canner was a used one. My second canner was a used one. I finally bought myself a new Presto. Now I have nothing but used canners. Well, except for the 4 jars one. Okay, that was my second new to me canner. You get what you can get. Just make sure it's the right equipment for the right job. The same thing goes with the food. Just because somebody else eats it doesn't mean that it's something that you and your family are going to enjoy. So do you go out and buy a case of okra if your family doesn't eat okra? No, you buy a can and you test it out on everyone and see whether or not they stay at the table. And then you decide whether or not you want to put it into your rotation. Do you go and can up 100 pounds of chicken when nobody in your house has ever had canned chicken? No. You can up a few jars and you find different ways to incorporate it into meals until you know that your family will eat it, and then you become the ugly chicken crazy person in your household. It's a beautiful title to hold. You can do this one step at a time because, as the book says, we are in the 4th turning. We have a decade of more chaos, of more unrest, and then things will start to turn around, and then we'll get back to something during our discussion that I said was akin to the 1950s, okay? Where everything's happy and people are working and life is going good. That's 10 years plus away. But we have to make it through the next 10 years intact. Supporting each other, holding each other up, teaching each other, learning from each other, and being the best that we can be, doing the best that we can do to take care of us and ours. I told you about the carrots, my canned carrots. I started putting this on there, Cuisinart Maple Bacon Seasoning. Now, legitimately, let's see, a serving size is 1/4 teaspoon, okay? But you don't need a lot. And the ingredients are very small. There is sugar in here, ingredients. There's sugar in here and a few other things. So I'll put a link down below if I can find it online. But you sprinkle this over cooked carrots and then heat them up. Oh my gosh, Phil's in love. I'm going to go through a ton of carrots now. But really, really good stuff if you want to give it a try. I hope that this was an encouraging chat. I hope that you took something away from it. I hope that you are starting your list if you have not started, or you are continuing and figuring out how to break it down into smaller bite-sized chunks so that you are building a prepared pantry for the rough years that we have ahead of us. If you want to check out the playlist with different ways to store food and different foods that you can store, check out this playlist right here. And until next time, everybody, be safe.